Greetings, citizens, and thanks for tuning in to Nindy Nation. I'm Jeff, and today on episode 140, we're taking a look at every indie game hitting the Nintendo Switch through the week ending March 13th. You can find Nindy Nation on Twitter, come hang out with us on Discord, or check out the week's new releases with us right here on YouTube every Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern during our Nindies at Night stream. Now, before we dive into all the new indie games on today's episode, let's first check in on those which slipped between the cracks over the past week. These are the 9 neglected Nindies that released since episode 139. Out of nowhere, on Friday the 4th, Mediascape announced and then promptly released the remake of a 2004 action platformer, as they dropped Super Zangura for $19.99. This game shares a ton of similarities with the classic Castlevania games, as you traverse a big castle and fight bosses in a mostly linear experience. The big difference here is that they threw out all of the timeless gothic visuals and replaced them with colorful anime art. It looks good, that's for sure, and I would like to try it, but I don't know how I feel about
Castlevania, except you're an anime maid who battles a boss which is a naked baby statue that requires you to hit it in the dick with the ball and chain.
So we'll see. And Red Deer Games released Buck Bradley Comic Adventure for $6.99. It's an interactive comic book of sorts with humor that would be a great fit for kids probably 7 to 10 years old. Gameplay is a mix of various point-and-click tropes, and according to the description, some puzzles will require you to move your head and feel the situation. Whatever that means. The rest of this week's neglected Nindies are, well, let's just knock them out so we can go see what's coming next week. Here's a few games to make sure you avoid. Words with Freds. That's right, Freds. It's a Wordle ripoff that looks atrocious by Mokuzai Studio. Jet Dogs is taking up space on the eShop again with another idle clicker game where you just tap on things until the bar fills up. There's a bunch of these, and this one is called 12 Labors of Hercules 5 Kids of Hellas. It looks hella bad. And if shovelware had a name, it would definitely be Benjamin Kistler, and he's back this week with Simple Mini Golf. Red Wings was a decent dogfighting game, but then apparently one of the executives at
All In
Games slammed his fist on the table and said,
"We need to squeeze this franchise more."
And in a panic, the team took screenshots of the game, dragged and dropped the Microsoft Paint interface, and called it Red Wings Coloring Planes. And then Prison Games released ABC Match With Me, otherwise known as the game they made to keep the children locked in their basements busy. Rounding out the list, we've got a competition on our hands to see who can make the worst mobile driving game possible. Behind door number 1, Pixel Mob has Off-Road Night Racing. Behind door number 2, T-Bull has, I think, the exact same game, just during the daytime, with Extreme Fast Rally Driver 3D. That doesn't even sound real. And behind door number 3, Ultimate Games has Bus Driver Simulator Countryside. Congratulations to all of this competition's entrants, but the winner is nobody because you're all losers. Let me know what you think about Super Zangura because I'm very conflicted on that one. Maybe we should check it out on Nindies at Night. Looking ahead, the eShop is sleepy in the early part of the week, but the big Thursday drop is back, and it's a doozy. These are the 19 new releases hitting the Nintendo Switch through Sunday, March 13th. East Asia Soft kicks off the week with a game by Paper Bunker that seems way outside East Asia Soft's wheelhouse because, as far as I can tell, there are no anime boobies. While Splash Cars looks like a good time, I'm struggling to see where its longevity will come from. It's basically Splatoon with cars. You drive around in an isometric view with cars that leave paint all over the colorless world while you outrun the fuzz and see who can splat the most color. It supports up to 4 players locally and launches on Wednesday the 9th for $6.99. The other title dropping on Wednesday is, get this, a challenging platformer that actually does something different. Take your usual tough-as-nails platformer, toss in a bunch of neon colors with a smooth animation style, and you've got the gist of No Gravity's latest release, the oddly named Will You Snail. But then they throw in an antagonist, which is an AI who constantly tosses traps your way, and things get pretty interesting. Apparently, the AI also taunts you the whole time, similar to GLaDOS from Portal, and I really like that touch. It's $15, so I doubt I'll jump in immediately, but maybe we'll check it out on stream or during a sale. But then we get to Thursday, citizens, and with it, the release of one of my most anticipated Nindies of the year. Young Souls is the first release by two veteran developers who teamed up to create 1P2P, and this first outing for the French studio looks fantastic. Following the story of a brother and sister, these two orphans stumble upon a scientist who has something called the Moongate Portal, which takes the duo to a world where monsters thrive. From there, I'd assume things spiral out of control and you have to save the world or something. I'm not really sure. It sounds cool and all, and while the narrative is already receiving high praise and the game looks beautiful, as you can see, it's the gameplay that I'm so excited to try. It's a mix between an arcadey beat-em-up and a fully featured RPG. So that means you've got hundreds of weapons, tons of upgrades, a rich story, level progression, and all of it revolves around a game that can be played co-op with a friend. I also like that a game which looks like this, being cartoony and all, is M-rated, because it's fun to see games that may look like they're for a younger audience actually turn out to be much more mature than they seem. Young Souls launches by way of the Arcade Crew for $24.99, and while that's fairly expensive, I gotta tell ya, this team is quickly becoming one of my favorite publishers, having released Kunai, Blazing Chrome, and most recently Infernax, just to name a few. If you're a Game Pass subscriber, Young Souls will be available on day one, but if you're on the fence, stop by on Thursday and we'll check it out together. I've got really high hopes for this one. And then we're treated to a really cool gem that I forgot existed, and I'm really glad to see it make its way to the Switch. If you're a fan of sci-fi stories like 1984, make sure to add Republique to your wishlist. It was an early crowdfunding darling that released on consoles around 2016 and received mostly positive reviews overall. It's about a woman named Hope who is trapped inside the massive futuristic headquarters of a totalitarian government, and you need to help her escape. Thing is, you aren't physically there, so you play the whole game as a hacker who is watching Hope through cameras and other security systems. You trick guards, set traps, and generally just help guide her to safety. Along the way, you'll get a super intriguing story that is very well acted and presented, and should be more than enough to carry any sci-fi fan through to the end. It's about a 10 to 12 hour game, is developed by Camouflage, and releases with a 30% discount this week for $10.49. For something completely different, we've got The Last Cube by Nindy newcomer Improx Games. It's a rich, detailed 3D puzzle adventure where you play as a cube and solve just about every type of 3D puzzle you could think of. It's $19.99, which seems a little high, though, to be fair, I don't know how long it is, and should be considered by anyone who enjoys having their brain teased. Here's a fun one for those of you feeling especially competitive. Move or Die Unleashed is a
zany multiplayer party game with a gimmick!
Developed by Those Awesome Guys. Love that name. Well done. And it releases for $14.99. It's a 2D arena of sorts where, if you stand still, you die, and each round lasts only 20 seconds with completely different modes and rules shifting in and out with every round. It's almost like if Runbow and WarioWare had a baby. Oh, that would be a hideous baby. It's got couch, local wireless, and online play, and states that new game modes are being released in perpetuity and will always be free. And that's a nice touch because the game released on PC 5 years ago, so there's a lot of content. I wouldn't suggest buying it unless you've got people who will want to play it with you, but there are bots and online play if you really like what you're seeing. And then, Dear Villagers teams up with Plug-in Digital, Nameless 13, and Meridium Games for Ashwalkers, a survival sim that released on PC last year and hits the Switch this week for $19.99. Set in a post-volcanic apocalypse, the game's all-gray tone is quite striking and does a good job of setting the mood. In a third-person perspective, your team of 4 will trek across the wasteland as you manage their health and resources while making constant tough choices that result in one of 34 different endings. It received average reviews last year, and each run will take you just about 2 hours. You know, if nothing else, Ashwalkers kinda feels like a modern-day Oregon Trail. I like it. Dynamic Voltage Games releases their first title for the Switch this week with Time Blazer, a space shooter that feels a lot like Super Stardust, but on a 2D plane instead of a 3D planet. You move left and right and shoot down enemies, all while a horde of asteroids tries to trap you in. This one looks fun for sure, but it's $15, so I'll say throw it on your wish list and we'll take a second look when it goes on sale. It's been a while since we've seen a release from PlayStage Interactive, which means it's been a while since I've been able to say that they are a division of
Prestige Worldwide.
Kidding aside, their spooky $6 release called Frightence isn't my bag, but the premise is pretty cool. You play as the janitor of an apartment building that's known for supernatural events. For some reason, everyone has been evacuated, and it's up to you to check every room to make sure they're all empty. I'm sure everything is fine, and you just walk around a bunch of empty rooms, you know? Surely nothing spooky happens. And Microids is back with an overpriced game, this time exhausting all of their caps lock quota with
Grand Mountain Adventure Wonderlands.
It's an isometric snowboarding game that does look fun and supports up to 4 players, but it's hard to see the game delivering $35 worth of value. Speaking of caps lock,
Playism
has another one for you, and I'm quite torn on this one. Potato Flowers in Full Bloom is a first-person dungeon crawler with battles that play out like a turn-based JRPG. And while the visuals are primitive, I do like the style. There's a demo available, so I'm gonna give it a try, and if it's good, I'll put it on my wish list because it's $17.99. Now, this isn't called out specifically, so we'll do it a bit differently because I think it has procedurally generated levels, and it sounds like it has roguelike mechanics, but I know that it includes RPG elements. Sorry kids, can't just go throwing that around anywhere. We gotta make sure. But if you prefer your dungeons in the top-down flavor, and you prefer puzzles over combat, maybe consider Cubites release this week, Dungeon Color for $3.99. Not sure what else to say about this one. You grab the key, you open the door, and you move on to the next level. You know, that old chestnut. Art Game Studios is notorious for releasing bad games, even publishing a couple straight-up asset flips. And they're also responsible for Pooplers, the game about pooping babies. Because of that, I'm especially wary of this week's release, Ancients Island, a tower defense game that seems to lean heavily into the more offense-based aspects of an RTS. It's releasing on Steam the same day, so we don't have reviews to go off of yet, but I'm also concerned as the interface doesn't look especially altered for the Switch. It's only $12.49, but for the reasons mentioned, I'd say hold off for the reviews. And then we get quite the curious release with Time Loader by Post Meta Games, who is responsible for last year's fantastic Biped. It's a story-driven, physics-based puzzle platformer where you play as a little robot exploring a kid's world in the 1990s. What's curious about it is the notion of time travel and the description's hints that you're doing all of this, going back in time and all, to thwart some kind of tragic event that happened to the kid whose room you're exploring. It launches for $14.99 with a great aesthetic and looks pretty fun. Maybe this would be a good one to check out on Nindies at Night. What do you think? Silesia Games has a sliding block puzzle called Slide Stories Neko's Journey. And I swear we've covered this game before. It's $3 and, I don't know, what else do you want from me? Last up for the big Thursday drop is a game I've been very excited about for the past couple months, as Aztec Forgotten Gods finally releases for $29.99. But before you click buy, we need to talk about this one. Watch any trailer for the game or look at what I'm showing you now, and it looks like a 3D action game where you tackle enormous god monsters, almost like a cartoony sci-fi take on Shadow of the Colossus. In fact, all of the trailers look like this game is non-stop action. However, I watched no less than 4 different gameplay videos, and while the PC demo from last fall certainly shows a cool big boss battle in a huge city-like arena, well, if you look at a video like Handheld Player's first 35 minutes, it's nothing but running around a big empty space and getting bombarded by dialogue that is acted out through grunts and mumbling. So I'm very confused by this one. The Mexican team Lienzo last released Mulaka, which was basically a 3D mascot action platformer, and it was pretty good, so all the more reason to look forward to Aztec. It's just so weird that the marketing materials seem to be so different than the raw footage that's out there. Maybe the reviews turn out great and the game is just really heavy on world building before setting you loose, but that's a big if, so let's hold off for now, maybe check it out on Nindies at Night, and see what others think when Aztec wraps up the Big Thursday drop. As usual, there's a few more games to touch on this Friday, but first, let's look at the Nindy no-nos that we suggest you don't touch with a 10-foot pole. The Wild Case is a 2D point-and-click adventure set in the spooky woods, but try as I might, I just cannot find anything about this game that looks like more than a slideshow of drab cabins. Ultimate Games ported a mobile thing called Pocket Slimes that I can only assume is all about playing with yourself in public. Jondusoft makes boxes go around rectangles in Retro Pixel Racers. Cubic Games is a liar because Omnom Coloring Tunes and Puzzle is much less a game and much more of a collection of free mobile kids apps sold with no less than 5 packs of DLC. You know what the eShop needs more of? Anime porn novels all about a lesbian teacher hooking up with her student. My guess is that the prepubescent boys at iMel were spending too much time playing Pocket Slimes because I can't imagine feeling anything but gross when looking at Secret Kiss is Sweet and Tender.
Oh, that's nasty.
But I've saved the best for last, so 90s kids, strap in. Back in the early days of CD-ROM gaming, General Mills released a ridiculous first-person shooter where, instead of shooting, you force-feed checks to aliens. At the time, it was hilarious, because of how bad it was. This week, Chex Quest HD gets ported to the Switch for some reason, and features a trailer which states, and I quote,
Chex Quest, still free, now in HD.
You know where this is going, don't you? Yep. Cubic Games is charging $4.99 for a corporate advertisement that deliberately states it is free. Maybe it's an error that will be fixed before release, but at least for now, I really hope it isn't. 3 Nindies round out this jam-packed week, the first of which is 200 Ways, releasing by Sunlight Games for $11.99. It's the sequel to 100 Ways and tasks you with getting 1 or more balls to the exit of trap-filled stages using more than 40 tools to help you build momentum, avoid obstacles, and keep the balls from running into each other. If you like brain teasers and you like physics puzzles, consider taking these balls for a spin. Not sure about that line. Red Deer Games has a psychologically spooky first-person shooter for you with Syndrome for $24.99. You wake up on a big old spaceship and, guess what? Things have gone haywire. It's a mix of shooting the weaker enemies while hiding from the bigger ones, and it claims to mess with your head throughout. Not a bad showing, but as with many games this week, the price, at least right now, seems a bit too high. But, coming in at the usual $4.99, Ratalaika's release this week seems just right. Developed by the unfortunately named Seep, or I guess
Seep!
Cosmos Bit is an 8-bit Metroid-like. Explore an alien world, find some upgrades, you know the drill. It looks to have some simple action and platforming challenges and is overall a very charming little indie. I'm totally feeling this game and will at least be checking it out for myself. So if it doesn't make the Nindies at Night cut, check with me on Twitter or Discord for some impressions later this week. What do you think? It's a pretty solid week. Young Souls is easily topping my list, but I'm also looking forward to Will You Snail, Republic, Time Blazer, and quite a few more. What about you? Let me know down in the comments and let's go check out the deals. We've got a couple of great picks for $5 and a bunch that are just $1.99 this week. So without further ado, citizens, these are our picks for the 10 best Nindy deals on sale through at least March 19th. First up are the $5 games, and we start with one of my favorites from 2020. Releasing the same day as the surprise drop of Hades, Going Under totally got shafted. It's a very similar game, an isometric roguelike dungeon crawler, but instead of gods and monsters, Going Under is all about the evils of corporate tech bro culture, and it is hilarious. The music is great, the gameplay is fun, progression is very straightforward, and it had me laughing my ass off on more than a couple occasions. For $5, a 75% discount, this game is an absolute steal, with all of its procedurally generated levels, roguelike mechanics, and RPG elements! And then, also for $4.99, we've got IAI, a game that I can wholeheartedly say is an incredibly bland shoot-'em-up, and I say that in the most endearing way possible. Because for the weekend that I was hooked on that game, I loved it. You just move through stages, and when you hit one that's too tough, you backtrack to collect currency and get stronger, eventually building an unstoppable sci-fi killing machine. There's a pretty big demo you can check out, so do that if you're on the fence, and for what it's worth, the story has some of the most unintentionally funny translations I have ever seen. And now we move on to a bunch of games that are just $1.99. Keep in mind that I'm recommending these games because they're $1.99. They're all solid in their own right, but I'm assuming your expectations are appropriately tempered. Oh, and we'll start with a bunch of trifectas, so until stated otherwise, it's fair to assume procedurally generated levels, roguelike mechanics, and RPG elements! Akane is a brutally hard top-down game where you basically play as Uma Thurman during Kill Bill's fight with the crazy 88s. You drop in the room, dodge, kill things, die, then hopefully earn enough currency to get stronger before you do it again. It's simple and it's fun, but just know that it is very hard. Hyper Parasite is a pretty standard top-down roguelike, but the hook is that your primary ability allows you to control other characters, like a parasite, and you can do it to pretty much any character you run into. There's a good deal of jank in this game, that's for sure, and the visuals are pretty muddy on the Switch, but it's a perfectly serviceable game if you're just looking to scratch that trifecta itch. And then we've got 3 games, all from the same developer, Calcat, and they all include a ridiculous amount of pixelated demons, pixelated gore, and copious amounts of pixelated boobies. But the gameplay is great. Xenon Valkyrie Plus is my favorite, and it's currently 80% off, and it's a side-scrolling platformer where you explore huge areas to find upgrades and keys that you need to reach the end. The combat is kinda what you make of it, as you can equip and customize a wide range of weapons like melee or guns, etc. And it's very, very tough, but again, it's $2, and I think pretty much anybody can find $2 of fun in it. Demon's Tier Plus is pretty much exactly the same game, but just as a top-down dungeon crawler. And while it isn't my favorite of the 3, it's probably the one with the highest quality of all of the games from Calcat. And it includes 2-player co-op. And then, taking a break from the trifectas for the rest of the show, is Riddled Corpses EX, which shifts the perspective to an isometric 3D viewpoint and plays like a 16-bit arcade game. Think of this one like a Smash TV or the top-down levels in Contra, and know that it is especially fun if you've got someone to play co-op with. If you happen to have a spare keyboard laying around, I highly recommend checking out Epistory Typing Chronicles, because it's basically a game like Diablo, but you type instead of pressing buttons, and it is surprisingly fun. I played it on Nindies at Night last year and ended up seeing the game through to its completion over the next couple weeks. So go watch the stream if you're curious, but know that this one is absolutely unique and definitely worth $1.99. Space Pioneer is a free-to-play mobile game that was ported to the Switch and then had all of its free-to-play stuff stripped out. It's a level-based, isometric twin-stick shooter where you pick a level and then tackle a task, like defending a base, destroying alien hives, or just surviving a horde. It's the epitome of dumb, brain-dead fun, and is one I still dip in and out of from time to time. And finally for the week, it's 1 or 6 games, depending on how you look at it. All of the Bit Trip games are back on sale. These are fantastic 8-bit style games that are all about coordinating the action on screen with the music you hear, and the soundtracks are fantastic. I'd love to use one, but whenever I do, I get a copyright strike. I recommend starting with Bit Trip Runner, which is an auto runner where you time jumping and ducking with the beat of the music, but if you want more than that, Bit Trip Fate is what happens when you combine a rhythm game with a side-scrolling shooter, and it is also incredibly fun. Very few games can get me into a flow state like the Bit Trip games, so if you've never checked them out, $1.99 is a great way to start. How's that for a smorgasbord of deals? You could get all of the games I listed today for less than $30 and have a ton to play. Or a ton to sit on your backlog, so maybe don't do that. But do head down to the comments and let me know if you're picking any of these up, especially if you're getting Going Under or Epistory. I want to hear what more people think about them. Also, if you want up-to-the-minute inane ramblings, go follow Nindy Nation on Twitter. And for deals, game discussion, and general chatting with a bunch of cool people, come hang out with us on Discord. Links to everything are down in the description. As usual, we'll be checking out a couple of this week's releases live during Nindies at Night, and we hope to see you there this Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube. Otherwise, that's it for this week, citizens. Thanks so much for watching, liking, subscribing, and sharing Nindy Nation with others. Until next week, I'm Jeff. This has been Nindy Nation episode 140. And remember, no matter what type of game you're looking for, Nindy Nation will be right here to help you find just the thing to keep your Joy-Cons synced.